locals for all the problems. So the crisis started in Thailand, and then it spread to other countries. So the trigger was, as is so often the case, a fall in the real estate prices, so house prices, and then a fall in asset prices. And so, as you know, this has a negative wealth effect. It's going to reduce investment, in particular residential investment. So the construction sector typically slows down very, very substantially. Think of Ireland in the last crisis, think of Spain in the last crisis, and so on. And in general, lower wealth reduces consumption. So indeed, there was a very substantial slowdown in demand and output, also slowed down in exports. And then people started saying, right, one of the reasons why this is not, the growth hasn't been as good as we had expected is because this bad currency has been tied with the dollar, and the dollar has been appreciating with respect to other key currencies, such as the Chinese renminbi. And so people started speculating about the devaluation, and of course, once you speculate about the devaluation, as you know, there's going to be capital account deficits that used to be capital account surpluses, and an increase in interest rates to defend that expected devaluation. And so, as you can see, this is our balance of payments, and remember, account. It sums to zero, but we have the official foreign exchange interventions. So, before the crisis, this was constant, more or less, so equal to zero. The capital account was positive, the current account was negative, the capital account was positive, and the two more or less balanced. With the capital flight, the capital account becomes negative. This was already negative, so the only way you can guarantee payments is by drawing on reserves. This is unsustainable. And so what's going to happen next is that you'll have to abandon your peg, so this disappears, so you no longer intervene, and of course your CA plus your KA will now have to be equal to zero. And so if you have a capital account deficit because capital is leaving the country, what needs to happen to your current account? Needs to be positive, exactly. And how is it that you go from a current account deficit to a current account surplus? Remember, the difference between the two is just how much society as a whole is spending relative to output. You go from that, from one to the other. Let's just rewrite the basic identity that you know since your first lecture in macro. So we have this basically, right? So this is now has to be positive. So how can you get that? Only if this falls, and this falls. And of course, this is a substantial decrease in demand. So everything needs to be cut, taxes need to rise, government expenditure needs to be cut across the board, people will have to reduce their consumption of stuff, and a lot of the stuff that they were importing, and the same thing for investment. And that's how you get from a speculative attack on a currency, you get explosive combination of currency crisis, banking crisis, and debt crisis. And GDP in 1 year in Thailand was reduced by more than 11%. In Indonesia, it was even worse. Where is it? I think I wrote it down. GDP fell by something like 13% in 1 year. And so, of course, as you know, every time GDP falls substantially, even by 5%, unemployment increases very substantially as well. And with this, you had all sorts of social problems. There were, in Indonesia in particular, there were lots of riots and many deaths and so on. So this is not just playing with numbers. There are very, very serious repercussions of these crises in the lives of millions of people, like politicians would say, hard-working families. Yeah. Right, so speculation did happen, and so the crisis spread to other countries. Why is it you have this spread to other countries? Because of this phenomenon of contagion. And I gave you an article that explores what lies behind contagion. And this, don't underestimate the herd behaviour of financial markets. So if people start seeing this guy, whatever, guru, George Soros is doing this, oh, he's so clever. So if he thinks this country is not a good investment prospect, he must be right. And so his guys also selling. And then again, it becomes self-fulfilling. So herd behaviour is obviously important, but of course the trade linkages are also important. So a classic thing is, okay, Thailand, the baht had to be strongly devalued, but of course there will be other countries that are also producing stuff that competes directly with Thailand's products. And so people will start saying, unless those countries also devalue their currency, they will be losing competitiveness against the Thailand's economy. So they expect a devaluation even more. And again, it becomes self-fulfilling because of the attack on the currency and the impossibility of the central bank to carry on losing reserves. And this is also important. If the international creditors are our lovely banks in the West and so on, then they will withdraw money across entire regions because they just wanted to make sure that they don't make losses, or at least their losses are as small as possible. So currency crisis can indeed be very, very costly, and you have several readings in the you have your textbook that I think is quite good in sort of filling in lots of details, the narrative behind these things. And then you have some extra readings that we'll talk about a lot more, many other crises. Okay, this slide here is just there for completeness. So, I mean, they keep on happening. You have more or less between 60 to 70 countries today, as I speak, that have fixed exchange rate systems. All of these currencies are effectively, potentially suffering from future speculative attacks. Is there a way we can try to minimise the probability of this? And there's a literature that looks at so-called early warning systems. And we have all of these things that could go wrong. So these are, look at the problems, look at excess domestic credit growth, look at the excess deficits, government deficits, current account deficits, look at the amount of foreign exchange reserves, look at all of these things and see signs of the crisis in the speculative attack is becoming ever more likely. But as I wrote in here, the problem with this is that these early warning systems, they predict several crises, but they miss many, and they generate lots of false alarms. So, and in part, and they're also not particularly good at predicting the timing. So they know, yeah, very likely to happen. It could happen in the next 2 years, and it happens 3 months later. Yeah? Okay, now I'll give you 1 minute to read before we look at the final topic. So that's now lecture 8. This is going to be very, very light on theory because we've covered more or less all the needed.